Hello to all my friends and family, and welcome to Jim's 5am Club. I've got a day off work today, so I thought I'd just come for a walk down here at North Sydney, and we'll do a walk and talk as what we normally do. And I'm just reflecting about a presentation that I went to over the weekend where Jeffrey Robertson presented a case for the unification of the Parthenon marbles, and he took us all on this magnificent journey, an exceptional, wonderful journey with his storytelling style, where he presented a case for the unification of the Parthenon marbles. And I've got to tell you, I was absolutely spellbound. I was spellbound by his voice, by his style, by the way he put together the material, and he was very, very convincing and excellent to listen to. So what I want to do today is I want to present a book summary to you entitled The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr, where we'll investigate and spend a little bit more time learning the tricks of storytelling and why storytelling, the technique of storytelling, is so important to us humans in order to maintain and manage our relationships and to do the best we possibly can. So as you can see here, I'm in North Sydney at this magnificent location where we can see the Harbour Bridge. Got a few people walking past, chatting away with their coffees. So I'll try and do as best I can without interrupting others and being interrupted by others. So the book kicks off with a wonderful quote where the author reminds us and brings to the fore of our attention that we spend most of our lives consuming and creating stories. If you sit and think about it, social media, catching up for a coffee, going for a walk with your mates, sitting down at the dinner table, all of those things are storytelling and story receiving events. So most of our lives are spent consuming and creating stories. So whilst it does take up a lot of time in our lives, I think one of the important things that we do is we're able to maximise those events and get the best out of our skills. So the author then goes on to tell us that we are actually continually creating narratives. All of the storytelling that we do is an opportunity for us to create narratives, and everything we do, every single thing we do is a creation and a continuation of a narrative. So the author here tells us that we are continually creating narratives with what we say, with what we live, what we post, what we think, and what we do. So our expression, our human expression, is a continuation of a narrative. And the first formal point to come out of this book from this author is where the author says that storytelling is in our nature, and it's always been part of our nature. It's part of our human nature to like stories. I remember when I was a kid and I'd be with my uncles and aunts and grandparents. We'd be sitting around a table and I could sit there for hours and hours on end listening to the storytelling. And it was an art form. It was just beautiful to listen to. And you could just sit there and participate without saying a thing and be taken on a beautiful, most beautiful journey. So the author then reminds us and says that our reality, each and every one of our realities, is simply a combination of the stories that your brain tells you about what's going on around us. So we're telling ourselves stories all the time, and of course those stories can be serving stories. They can serve you, or they can disempower you. It all depends on what stories you choose to say to yourself and what stories you choose to tune in on, in terms of what you hear, in terms of the media, your family, your friends, your parents, your grandparents. All of those stories are competing for your attention, and it's important for you to be selective with the stories that you choose to listen to and the stories that you choose to tell yourself about the reality that is happening in your world. The author here then goes on to say a little bit more about storytelling, and something that I just learnt now is that in the stories that we tell ourselves, our brain always places us as the main character. So we're always the protagonist in our storytelling. So that's why when we're telling ourselves disempowering stories, we're always down on ourselves, we're always blaming ourselves, and we're always taking things personally. And the reason why we do that is because the very, very nature of our brain requires us to be the main characters in the stories. That's why when other people are saying their stories or telling us things, we always personalise it and take it on board. And sometimes we do it by mistake. Somebody else may be talking about something completely different, but we think that they're talking about us, or they're suggesting that we have done something that may need to be changed or corrected. But within the storytelling in our brain, the way our brain stores and interprets stories, the author says that everything is linear in our brains, because our brain is constantly searching the environment and looking for cause and effect sequencing, which is interesting to learn. But going back in time, the author reminds us that storytelling was one of our key survival mechanisms. Because think about it, the better you were or are at communication skills in historical times, in prehistoric times, then the greater the chance of your survival or being able to survive. By being able to communicate, by being able to rationalise what's happening, by being able to break it down and to pass it on, meant that certain people, certain communities were in a better and stronger position to be able to survive. So the second formal point to come out of this book summary is that if you want to be a good storyteller, one of the keys is to give yourself or give your character some flaws. Because by creating flaws in your character and passing them on will certainly get other people's attention. So that's something which is interesting to, add into our skill set. That boasting and carrying on may not necessarily be the way to capture people's attention or to gain favour in people's eyes. But what the author here says, that if you're able to introduce character flaws and be a little bit honest about your weaknesses, then that's the sort of thing that captures other people's attention, because I guess that's a learning experience for them to understand you a little bit better. But it's also a level and an element of vulnerability that I think gives people authenticity. So the author then goes on to talk about the fact that our brain, the way our brain works, is it always casts us as the hero of our stories and places us morally above all others, which I guess is a weakness and a danger. And that's why we all become so judgmental, because as we said, the brain will place us as the hero and place us as the morally better person, and that's why people seem to always get on their moral high horse, pointing out other people's errors and challenges, and never see the hump on their back, just like the camel. So it's interesting just to understand how the brain works, and to think that our brain casts us as a hero of our stories and places us morally above all others. And I guess it makes sense, because we all think that we have the best understanding of the truth, even though we may be we have a number of biases and scotomas hiding the truths from us. But each person seems to think that they are right, and I guess that's what causes a lot of confrontation, a lot of issues, a lot of problems in our lives. Because I think I'm right, my wife thinks I'm right, but we all know that my wife is right. Sorry about that, a bit of humour just to kick off the day. So the author then moves on a little bit further, and it says, this is why we are bad at identifying our own weaknesses, because most weaknesses come from the beliefs we gained as children. It all gets back to our childhood. Time and time again, book by book that I read, everything seems to get back to one's childhood in terms of their weaknesses. But the author also goes on to mention that we have cultural influences that can warp our understanding of the world, including the way we see ourselves. I've had the honour, and I've been fortunate to have grown up being blended by two cultures. I've got my Greek culture and I've got my Australian culture, and I'm happy to say that I can swap in and out of both cultures and use the best of both cultures. But what we're saying here is that culturally, if you only have one culture, then in many ways you can be trapped by that culture. But I guess, to be honest, one of the beauties, one of the great things that we have going for us here in Australia is that Australia is a multicultural society where culture seems to blend beautifully, and we all can leverage and learn from each other's cultures, especially here in Australia, and take out and use and leverage the best of each of those cultures. So that you can look at that on the one hand, and then you can also look at other cultures in other countries. I won't pick any country in case I upset anybody, but you can understand that if you're growing up in a dominant culture, it can be oppressive, especially if you want to be different or to change, and yet your culture has all these rules which limit those changes, and you're looked down upon if you're any way different to the majority. So the next point that the author makes is that when we grow up and we become adults, as adults we tend to cling on to the beliefs that we've picked up as children or from our cultural exchanges. And what's worse is that not only do we pick them up and we cling on to them, but we also go to the next point and defend them, which it's funny because we tend to defend things which are undefendable sometimes, not because it's right, not because it makes sense, but because we've inherited a way of thinking or a way of living. We want to stick to it just because our parents voted a certain way, or just because your dad followed a certain football team. Doesn't mean that the children need to follow suit. The reason why Dad followed a certain team may have been because when he first started working, his workmates were following those teams, and in order for him to fit in to that society or to that cultural norm, he decided to do what he did. So that's just a different sort of an example. But as I was saying, people pick up beliefs, cling on to those beliefs, and end up defending those beliefs in many ways, sometimes to their detriment. But we'll leave that at that. So the last point to come out of this book is at the heart of every great tale, at the heart of every great story, according to this author, is a change of status. So what does that mean? A change of status. So the author here goes on to say that the prestige we get from other people is important to us. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I absolutely love certain people because they make me feel important, they make me feel special, they make me feel good about myself. So what the author, I think, is suggesting here is that if you want to be a good storyteller, then it's all about the feel, how you make people feel and how you touch other people. Because what the author is suggesting here is that it affects our mental and our physical well-being. If you can make other people feel good, then chances are you're going to make yourself feel good at the same time. And that has a double effect, or a quadruple effect actually, because it impacts their mental health and their physical well-being, but it also gifts you with better mental and physical well-being as well. So the author here is suggesting that our goals should be to lead us and others to higher status. In other words, don't look down on people, don't make them feel bad about themselves, don't make yourself feel bad about yourself, because it's a lose-lose situation, I guess. It's the best way just to describe it. Sometimes it's best to be humble, and what the author here is saying, to see yourself as the underdog, and to cheer for those around you, and to be part of their, be a cheerleader for their achievements, and to help them achieve their goals, and most importantly, to see yourself as being a partner in your own personal growth and development, but most importantly, to be partnering with other people for their growth and development. So if we can incorporate these elements in our storytelling, then the author says here that we will make an impact not only on ourselves, but also on others around us. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for joining me on this morning episode of Jim's 5am Club. As you can see, what I'm going to try and do from now on is to post one live video per day where I can get an opportunity to do it live, unedited, and to just go live to air, just to put a little bit more pressure on me so that I can continue to grow and develop myself and build my skills, and to also showcase and highlight the many beauties of this mistress named Sydney. Doesn't matter where I go, what I do, I'm just in awe of this beautiful city. And there are many beautiful places in the world, but the thing that I've learnt, and my mate Makis Vucinas told me, he says the key is to find beauty wherever you are. If I'm in Greece, I will look for the beauty in Greece. If I'm Sydney, I'll look for the beauty in Sydney. And as I said, I love using this as a backdrop to my 5am clubs so that we can go on a journey together. We can go on the Volta, as the Greeks say, and we can share in each other's day, be the wind beneath our wings, and hopefully make our days better, where we can live, learn, and pass it on. Take care. Philakia from Jim's 5am Club, and we'll see where I come from next. Take care, and thank you for joining me. And I appreciate the support that I get, and hopefully we can all become better storytellers so that we can inspire our children, grandchildren, friends, families, and anybody who comes into our lives. Yasas, and bye for now. Take care.